My husband filed for divorce right after I inherited my mom's fortune. He thought he hit the jackpot, but my mom outsmarted him. When my mother died and left me her entire fortune, my husband Noah suddenly became the most caring and supportive man on earth. But when I wouldn't let him spend my inheritance, he decided he didn't want to live with me anymore. What happened next was something that turned his world upside down. I always knew my mom was sharp. She was always one step ahead of everyone around her, and could read people like open books. But I didn't realize just how far ahead she'd planned until after she was gone, and her final chess move left everyone speechless. My relationship with Mom had been complicated in her last few years. There was a distance between us that I couldn't quite bridge, no matter how hard I tried. Part of the problem was that she never really approved of my husband, Noah. She never said it directly, but her feelings were crystal clear in other ways. During our visits to her cozy house in Maplewood, Mom would go quiet whenever Noah talked about his big plans or future dreams. She'd raise her eyebrows when he mentioned needing money for this investment opportunity or that business venture. Her questions always sounded more like statements, like she already knew the answers and didn't like what she'd discovered. "Mom, why can't you just be happy for me?" I asked her once after a particularly tense Sunday dinner where Noah had pitched his latest get-rich-quick scheme involving cryptocurrency. "I am happy when you're truly happy, sweetheart," she replied carefully, setting down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "I just want to make sure you're seeing the whole picture." "He's not perfect, but he's who I chose," I told her, feeling defensive. "Can't you just accept that?" She didn't argue with me. She just gave me that look, the one that made me feel like she could see moves on a chessboard that I couldn't even imagine. It was frustrating and comforting at the same time. "I love you, Qley," was all she said. "More than you know." I thought she was being overprotective, maybe even controlling. I figured all mothers struggled to let their daughters make their own choices, especially when those choices weren't perfect. Noah wasn't exactly what she'd envisioned for me. He worked at a mid-level marketing firm, drove a beat-up Honda Civic, and had a habit of ordering the most expensive item on the menu whenever someone else was paying. But he made me laugh. He remembered my birthday. He brought me chicken soup when I was sick. Wasn't that enough? Looking back now, I realize Mom saw through his charm to something I was too naive to recognize. She knew that when money entered our relationship, Noah's true colors would show. And she was preparing for that moment long before I even knew it was coming. When Mom died suddenly from a heart attack at 62, I was completely devastated. The grief hit me harder than I'd expected. We had so many unfinished conversations. Too much space between us that would never be filled now. I regretted every argument and every time I'd chosen Noah's feelings over spending time with her. The last thing we'd argued about was Thanksgiving dinner. Noah wanted to go to his brother's house in Phoenix instead of staying local with Mom. I'd sided with him, and now I'd never have another Thanksgiving with her. The funeral was beautiful but heartbreaking. Mom's colleagues from the accounting firm where she'd worked for 30 years shared stories about her kindness and sharp wit. Her book club friends talked about her infectious laugh and how she always brought homemade brownies to their meetings. Her neighbors from Maplewood described how she'd never missed collecting their mail when they were out of town. Noah was supportive during those dark days, I'll give him that. He handled the funeral arrangements when I was too overwhelmed to think straight. He fielded phone calls from relatives and organized the reception at Mom's house. He even helped me pack up her belongings, though I noticed he seemed particularly interested in her jewelry box and the antique furniture. "Your mom had great taste," he commented, running his hand along her mahogany dining table. "This stuff is probably worth a fortune." I was too grief-stricken to pay much attention to his comments at the time. But then, just 3 weeks after the funeral, Mom's lawyer called me with life-changing news. "Qley, I need you to come to my office," Mr. Patterson said gently. "There are some things about your mother's estate that we need to discuss in person." I met him at his law firm in downtown Chicago the next morning. His office was all dark wood and leather-bound books, the kind of place that made you speak in hushed tones. "Your mother left you everything, Qley," he said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. "The house in Maplewood, her retirement accounts, her savings, and some investments I don't think you knew about. It's quite substantial." I stared at the numbers on the paperwork, certain there had to be a mistake. The total inheritance was over $650,000. "This can't be right," I whispered. Mom was comfortable, but she wasn't wealthy. "Your mother was very private about her finances," Mr. Patterson explained. She'd been saving and investing for decades. She also inherited some money from your grandmother that she never touched. She wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of. I drove home in a daze, the folder of documents sitting on my passenger seat like a ticking time bomb. How was I supposed to process this? 3 weeks ago, I was grieving my mother's death. Now I was trying to wrap my head around being financially set for life. But what surprised me the most wasn't the money itself. It was how Noah reacted when I told him the news. At first, Noah seemed genuinely supportive and caring when I shared the news about Mom's inheritance. "Wow, Qley," he said, wrapping me in a hug. "Your mom always knew how strong you were. She wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of. You deserve this, babe." His reaction felt genuine, and I was relieved. I'd been worried about how such a large sum of money might change our relationship dynamics. But then within days, Noah started suggesting ways to spend the money. "You know what we should do?" he said one morning over breakfast at our kitchen table. He was buttering his toast with unusual enthusiasm. "Maybe it's time we traded in your old Toyota for something newer. You deserve to drive something nice." "My Camry runs fine, Noah," I said, stirring my coffee. "I don't need a new car right now." But with the inheritance, we could afford something really good. A BMW, maybe? Or that Lexus you always admired when we drove past the dealership. Something about his eagerness made me uncomfortable, but I pushed the feeling aside. Maybe he really was just trying to take care of me. Maybe this was his way of helping me process everything. Then came the vacation suggestions. "I found this amazing beach house we could rent in the Hamptons for the entire summer," Noah announced a few days later, his laptop open to a vacation rental website. "Just the two of us. Doesn't that sound perfect? We could both take time off work and just relax." "That sounds expensive," I said carefully. "So what? You can afford it now. We should enjoy life while we can." The suggestions kept coming. A weekend trip to Napa Valley. Season tickets to the Cubs. A membership at the exclusive country club where his boss played golf. Next came the housing ideas. "We should think about moving, Qley," he said during dinner one evening. "You've always complained about our tiny kitchen. Let's find a house that actually makes you happy. Something with a big yard, maybe a swimming pool." Each suggestion sounded reasonable on the surface, but something felt wrong about his approach. There was a hunger in his eyes when he talked about spending the money. A calculating quality that reminded me of how he looked at dessert menus at expensive restaurants. "Noah, I need time to think about all this," I told him. "It's a lot of money, and I want to be smart about it." "Smart about it?" he asked, his fork pausing midway to his mouth. "Qley, this is our chance to finally live the life we've always wanted. Why are you being so hesitant?" "Because it's not our money, Noah. It's mine. My mother left it to me." The words came out harsher than I intended, but they were true. And the look on Noah's face told me everything I needed to know about what he'd been thinking. His expression shifted from confusion to something darker. Something that made my stomach clench with recognition. That's when Noah's whole attitude changed completely. The sweet, supportive husband disappeared overnight, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Noah stopped bringing me coffee in the morning, something he'd done almost every day for our entire 8-year marriage. He stopped asking how my day went when I came home from work. The compliments about how strong I was and how much I deserved the inheritance completely dried up. He started sleeping in the guest room, claiming he wanted to give me space to process everything, and didn't want to intrude on my grief. But I knew the truth. Noah was angry that I wouldn't let him spend my mother's money. The silence in our house became deafening. We'd go entire evenings without speaking, both of us pretending to be absorbed in our phones or the television. When we did interact, it was purely functional. "Did you pay the electric bill?" Or "We're out of milk." Noah stopped doing the little things that had made our marriage work. He left dirty dishes in the sink, knowing I'd eventually wash them. He forgot to take the trash out on collection day. He started working late more often, claiming his marketing campaigns required extra attention. But I caught him researching divorce lawyers on his laptop one evening when he thought I was asleep. I had no idea that his anger was silently brewing up a storm inside his head. A storm that would turn our lives upside down. The tension became unbearable. I found myself walking on eggshells in my own home, afraid that any mention of the inheritance would trigger another cold shoulder treatment. I started eating dinner alone, reading Mom's old books to fill the silence. One night, I called my best friend Amanda to vent about the situation. "He's acting like I personally stole money from him," I told her. "Like I'm selfish for not wanting to blow through my mom's life savings on luxury cars and vacation homes." "Qley," Amanda said gently, "have you considered that maybe Noah is showing you who he really is? Your mom never liked him, did she?" The words hit me like a physical blow. Mom had tried to warn me, hadn't she? All those raised eyebrows and careful questions. All those times she'd gone quiet when Noah talked about money. "She saw something I couldn't see," I whispered. "Maybe it's time you started seeing it too." But I wasn't ready to admit that my 8-year marriage had been built on a foundation of sand. I still hoped Noah would come to his senses and remember that he'd married me, not my bank account. I was about to learn just how wrong I was. The explosion came exactly 1 month after we'd learned about the inheritance. Noah walked into the kitchen where I was making spaghetti and meatballs, his favorite meal, which I'd prepared as a peace offering, and dropped his bombshell with no warning. "I think we should separate," he said flatly. I set down my wooden spoon and turned to face him. His expression was cold, like he was talking to a stranger instead of his wife of 8 years. "Separate," I repeated, certain I'd misheard him. "This isn't working anymore, Qley. We want different things. You've changed since your mother died." "I've changed." I almost laughed, but the sound came out bitter. "Noah, you've been treating me like a bank account for the past month." "That's not fair," he snapped, his face flushing red. "I was trying to help us build a better life together. But you're too selfish to share anything. You're hoarding that money like some kind of dragon." "Selfish." Now I was getting angry. My mother just died, and all you can think about is spending her money. She worked her entire life to save that money, and you want to blow it on cars and vacations. "Well, maybe if we divorce, we'll both be happier," he said with a shrug, like he was discussing what to have for lunch. I stared at him for a long moment. The man I'd defended to my mother, the man I'd chosen over family dinners and holidays, was exactly who she thought he was. And I'd never once listened to her. That realization shattered my heart into a million pieces. But then something else clicked into place. A memory of Mr. Patterson's office, and a folder of documents I'd barely glanced at during my grief. "Okay," I said calmly. "But there's something you should know first." Noah's eyebrows shot up. He'd expected me to beg or cry or fight for our marriage. He'd probably practiced this conversation in his head, imagining me as the desperate wife clinging to a man who didn't want her anymore. "What?" he asked suspiciously. I walked to our home office and pulled out the folder from our fireproof safe. It contained all the documents from Mom's lawyer that I'd been too overwhelmed to read carefully. Now I understood why Mr. Patterson had insisted I review everything thoroughly. I returned to the kitchen and slid the folder across the counter to Noah. "Go ahead," I said. "Read the highlighted section on page 12. Noah opened the folder with the confidence of someone who thought he held all the cards. His face went from smug to confused to pale as he read the words aloud. "If my daughter Qley is married at the time of my passing, she will not receive access to any portion of her inheritance unless and until she is legally divorced. No spouse or third party may claim or access any portion of my estate under any circumstances." The kitchen fell silent except for the bubbling of pasta water on the stove. "You mean?" Noah's voice cracked slightly. "If we divorce, you get the money?" "Every single penny," I confirmed, unable to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. "But if we stayed married, neither of us would see a dime. The entire inheritance would go to the American Heart Association instead." Noah stared at the legal document like it had personally betrayed him. His hands were actually shaking as he reread the highlighted section. "Your mother planned this," he whispered. "She knew." "She sure did. 2 years ago, actually. Right around the time you started asking her for loans to fund your brilliant business ideas, remember?" Noah's face went from pale to red to pale again. We both knew exactly what I was talking about. The time he'd approached Mom about investing in his friend's food truck venture. The time he'd asked her to co-sign a loan for his cryptocurrency mining equipment. The time he'd suggested she help us with a down payment on a bigger house. Mom had politely declined each request, but I could see now that she'd been taking notes. building a profile of the man I'd married. She trapped me, Noah stammered. She protected me, I corrected. There's a difference. Noah slumped into one of our kitchen chairs, his head in his hands. But I already talked to a lawyer. He said spouses are entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. Not inheritance money received with conditions, I explained, feeling oddly calm. Mom's lawyer made sure of that. She researched Illinois divorce law thoroughly before she wrote this clause. So if I divorce you, I get nothing? Nothing, I confirmed. And if I divorce you, I get everything Mom intended me to have. Noah looked up at me with desperate eyes. Qley, please. I'm sorry. I was just excited about the possibilities. I didn't mean to. We don't have to get divorced. We can work this out. But it was too late. I'd seen who he really was when he thought money was involved. I'd watched him calculate our relationship like a business transaction. I'd felt him withdraw his love the moment I didn't give him access to my inheritance. No, Noah, I said quietly. We can't work this out. Because you just proved that you married me for what you thought you could get from me, not for who I am. That's not true. Isn't it? You were ready to leave me 5 minutes ago. The only thing that changed was learning about Mom's conditions. Noah opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. We both knew I was right. I'll file the paperwork tomorrow, I said. You can stay in the guest room until you find somewhere else to live. As I turned off the stove and dumped the perfectly cooked spaghetti into the colander, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. Mom had seen this moment coming from miles away, and she'd made sure I'd be protected when it arrived. 3 months later, I was officially divorced and $650,000 richer. Noah had tried to contest the divorce terms, but his lawyer quickly explained that Mom's conditions were ironclad. She'd consulted with estate planning attorneys to make sure every detail was legally bulletproof. There were no loopholes, no technicalities, no way for Noah to claim even a penny of the inheritance. The divorce itself was surprisingly smooth. Noah moved out of our apartment and into a studio on the other side of Chicago. He kept his Honda Civic, his clothes, and his wounded pride. I kept everything else, including the engagement ring he'd bought me, which, it turned out, he'd purchased with money borrowed from his credit card. Once the paperwork was finalized, I made some changes of my own. I quit my stressful job at the marketing agency where I'd been working 60-hour weeks for mediocre pay. Instead, I started freelance consulting, choosing my own clients and setting my own schedule. The inheritance gave me the financial freedom to be selective about the work I took on. I sold our old apartment and bought a charming craftsman house in Evanston, just 20 minutes from where Mom used to live. It has a big kitchen with granite countertops, a reading nook by the front window, and a garden where I've started growing the tomatoes Mom always loved. I took that solo trip to Italy I'd dreamed about since college, the one Noah had always said we couldn't afford. I spent 2 weeks wandering through Tuscany, eating incredible food, and visiting the art museums Mom had always wanted to see. Every sunset felt like a gift she'd given me. But the most important thing I did was frame the last photo I'd taken with Mom. It sits on my mantel now, next to a copy of her will. In the picture, she's smiling that knowing smile, the one that used to frustrate me so much. Now I understand what she was seeing. Noah occasionally texts me, usually when he's had a few drinks. He tells me he's sorry, that he misses me, that he realizes he made a mistake. But I know the truth. He doesn't miss me, he misses the money he thought he was going to get. Meanwhile, I'm building the life Mom always hoped I'd have. I'm dating again, carefully, thoughtfully, with the wisdom she tried to give me. I volunteer at the animal shelter on weekends. I host book club meetings in my living room, just like Mom used to do. And sometimes, when I'm sitting in my garden with a cup of coffee, I talk to her out loud. Thanks, Mom, I say to the sky. You saved me in more ways than one. I can almost hear her laughing, pleased that her final chess move worked exactly as she'd planned. She knew Noah would reveal his true nature when money entered the picture. She knew he'd choose greed over love. And she made sure that when that moment came, I'd have everything I needed to start over. My mother always was one step ahead of everyone else. Even in death, she was still protecting me, still teaching me, still loving me unconditionally. Noah thought he'd hit the jackpot when he learned about my inheritance. Instead, he'd walked straight into the most elegant trap I've ever seen. And I couldn't be more grateful.